I guess what's really important is that I think that I'm not the epicenter of my entire world. I live as multiple people, and I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing so much as other people might. And this is the best way to explain it. I like to draw. I'm a comic artist, and there's nothing really significant or special to me. And I was feeling kind of uninspired during this sketch. And what I have to mention here is that Invictus, one of the other alters, is watching me draw, and he knows that I'm kind of uninspired, and he can tell by the way that I'm drawing. He's just like, you're just not into this, and I can tell. And so he kind of comes around and he's like, what do you want me to do? Do you want me to draw myself here? And I kind of explained to him that I'm like, no, I want you to be on a different layer and like talk about yourself independently. So as much as this shows the connection, you see that he asks there and then starts to draw himself in a different layer. And Invictus is this really creative part of me. I can't attest too much to my teens, but he certainly can. And I think the important thing is that I don't really have to speak for anyone here that's drawing themselves. Fully, Invictus will show you what he wants to show you about himself as a person, and as much as it's a little bit difficult for him to be around these days because of, honestly, the weight of the world. Not everyone, enjoys constant, chaos, and not that many of us do, but I think he finds it a lot harder to be around knowing that everybody is so much more ready to fight and argue than ever, as it's something he just genuinely isn't and has never been interested in. He's much more of a comic artist than me. When I think of like comics, I think of short and funny, but when he does comics, you can see this is kind of elaborate, and it's because he designed a comic around who he was as a person before he fully understood, like, me person. So I think a lot of it does display who he is, despite not being a lot of image. It was called Trash HQ, if you're wondering, and that's really a mouthful for me. One of my favorite things about him is that we spent a lot of time together when I was in my late teens. So I got to learn a lot about him indirectly, but also with a very strong connection. We've naturally had a very like low amount of amnesia around each other. So the experiences I've had with him are very like surreal because I kind of feel like he's like literally right there, like next to me. So whenever he's around, it's usually around me. And not that that's an issue. I think it just pertains to how he feels about what's going on today and how everything is. And then there's Eden, who, I'm not gonna lie, I just think he likes to make things difficult for himself because I've never seen him particularly lay out like a sketch like this, but I just think it's funny because I know he really does like making things difficult for himself. He stands with this kind of like forward lean, if you would, and I think he's trying to capture that here, the hunch over he'll constantly be doing. And once again, not that I really have to speak for him, but he's loud. He's always been so loud, and he's always been someone who has been fighting the hardest and the loudest for me, whether I like it or not. And that's been really good for me, having someone that's like, regardless of how you feel, like, I am still gonna voice my opinion. And with that, I don't know. I love some of the sketches that he does because they're not a lot like mine. They're a lot more line dependent, and I really rely on shapes to convey how I'm like trying to set a vibe and trying to set a feeling, versus him here deciding very particularly like or rather trying to fix the mess he's made out of the anatomical structure, but like, picking where those green highlights are gonna go in his hair. Why did he write that? I don't know. I have ADHD. And once again, you can see he really speaks for himself. I think a lot of us are very opinionated, and I don't know what the Mario thing is. Everybody keeps mentioning Mario, and I feel left in the dark incredibly. And what I like is that he mentioned some bits about his identity, like being gay, being trans, but then, like, I'm a Gemini. Like, I think that's something really special because it's like you don't have to mention the differences alter to alter, but being able to really proudly present that, I think, is just fun at most points. I love that he drew the devil horns and tail because it's not something he has, but I think it represents how he feels other people see him as. And I gotta say, I think it's a little accurate, man. You tend to make yourself look like an enemy real fucking bad. So he checks out mine, and I love that little sketch he does, and this is him trying to convey to me that, like, I'm very uninspired, and, like, maybe it's the hair length, but it's not the same day I'm around. So Stein starts sketching right after that, or somewhere after, maybe after lunch. And Stein is like Eden, but even more particular. I mean, it really only takes him a few lines to convey what he looks like or what he's feeling. And everything is very, very catered to what he wants to display. And I love him for it. I think he's a great writer for that reason, and I think that's where Eden gets it from a little bit. He's super interested in science, and I don't know why he decided to do the little name tag, but I think it's exactly up his alley. It's goofy, kind of nerdy, and I wholeheartedly put my faith in him as someone that's, like, gonna make an alright decision. And that's not everyone in this system, so, considering that, he's got some good credit. And I think it's interesting how he also colors his eyes the same way Eden colored his eyes. And that was Frost for just a quick second trying to find a vibe, but he was like, nope. So he immediately dipped, and Rouge, who is very close to Frost, decided to draw himself right after. I thought that was like a garage opening. I was like, help. There's no garage within 30 feet of here, help. So what I love about Rouge is that he decides to, I mean, he's always been kind of, like, verbally challenged to, like, articulate what he feels. He goes on, like, these experiences, and he surrounds himself, literally, in this drawing with his experiences throughout my teens, I mean, at different points. And that's important because as alters, we're really just, like, experiences, aren't we? As people, we're experiences, and some of these make me laugh, some of these make me a little sad, but I ultimately feel a lot closer to him when I look at all of these images because, him trying to write out something isn't always his forte, nor is it what he wants to do. He really, really likes French because it's just like an easier way for him to understand linguistics at some points. And because of that, it challenged him to move forward into the world, try to get a job, and care about people beyond his realm. And I think this really displays that because on top of that, when he's looking at you and when you see this image of him, I love that in the background it's almost like what you're supposed to be seeing when you see him is his experiences, as that's what most people are defined by. A long presence in our system, I mean this specific one, I had to be like 12 versus the one right next to it. I was around 16, 17 at my first job. And that one is as I'm a full adult, moving in with my partner. He's had a very long history in the system, and so it's important for me to point that out because he has a lot to say, even if he doesn't say it. And I decided to get back into it, and I felt a little bit more inspired by the idea that, hey, like everybody else is drawing, I really have a good feel for this, and I definitely, if I can say it this way, found the vibe for my drawing. I don't mind drawing myself, depicting myself as it is. I like to draw myself big and round. I like it. I like the idea that I have a bunch of different feelings to convey, but they're mostly through shapes. And I don't know how to describe that. But I think seeing everyone else be able to express themselves so openly and freely for once was a really nice change for me. And even though I don't feel like there's anything particularly special about me, I really value what they have to say. So I think that's where it really inspired me to be able to write a little bit about myself. Surprisingly, I don't see cows as often as I thought I would, and I love cows. Um, that being said, I had to, endorse the Mario thing. But moving on, I love how you can see when everyone checks because we're all looking at what each other has drawn, and that's Frost going back checking what everybody else has drawn, see, oh, you guys are all done, and that's kind of his way of seeing if he's gonna allow himself to enter the space because, not like someone like Eden, for example. Eden is very loud. He's going to tell you who he is and he'll tell you how it is. And versus someone like Frost, who is conscientiously like waiting for us all to be done drawing before he decides how he's going to present himself because of also having a long history in the system and just being someone outside of me. He perceives these things very differently. One of my favorite things that he decides to include is this, and it's the first conscious memory I can really remember. And it's being a preschooler and seeing this gorgeous scene of pristine white snow. And then all my classmates come and just trample it. And he just has this thought, man, you guys ruined it. And it's just an opinion, but it's enough for him to hold on to. And I think that's being a person.